It is 9 o'clock, and this is the Wednesday, June 20th remote meeting of the Community Preservation Committee, and it is being recorded. Hello, everyone. The first order of business on our agenda today is the minutes of the June 16th meeting.
I move that we accept them as presented.
Great. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Thank you very much. Jim, they have been moved and seconded. Are there any other comments? Questions, corrections? Seeing none, I will ask for a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? That being said, it's passed unanimously. The second item on our agenda is every year we're required to have an election of officers and a reorganization of our committee. I did chat briefly with Jan. So the current staff of officers is I'm the chair and Jan is the co-chair. And since we have Mary, we don't need a secretary.
I think vice chair.
Vice chair, okay.
Vice chair, which is a little different, so.
Jan is in charge of vice on the committee.
Right.
So, is there anyone else who would like to be considered for a officer or on the committee? All right, so I'm going to suggest that we re-elect the current officers for the CPC. Does anyone like to make that movement? Thank you,
I would
Elaine.
love to make that motion. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Elaine.
I'll
Is there a
second.
Thank you, David.
Okay.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Thank you for your service.
Thank you both.
Thank you guys all for being
Appreciate it.
great
Yeah,
committee.
keep it up.
Okay, so there are no comments or other nominations. All those in favor of re-election of the current slate, please signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Any nays? And any abstentions? Thank you all. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item of business is the CPA finances. So Mary, do you want to give a report on what you think we have at this point?
Right. We still have not verified with the auditors what we have, but we do know from last year, the estimated amount for the Wellfleet contribution was 130, the state contribution was 139,263. But what we came up, they had a much greater match. What they ended up with from the state is $392,093. So the difference, and Stuart told us this when he presented the bonding presentation in fall, so that would be available to us on July 1st. So there's $252,830 that we know exists. Where they put it, it should be in the proper fund balance. There's a returned amount from administration, so that's like half of the percent. So that's at least $1,500. There's interest income that we're supposed to be getting every year. It's a small amount, but who knows where any of the money has been. And I've tried a couple of times to tell them that the interest on that big $2 million, almost $3 million that's in the bank, that is the mystery money, that we has our name on it. So Harry Decanian, encouraged me, but Mary McIsaac was having none of it. But we should have a small percent of that was labeled as CPA money. How they're going to figure it out, I have no idea. And then I was looking ahead also. You got the notice from Stuart, I think last week or early this week, that
Okay.
he is figuring that we're going to get another 40% match from the state. And I went in conservative with the 25% because I really worry about what percent we should use. And the only problem with going low and getting high is that that differential isn't available to us till the following year. But on the other way, to estimate too much and not have enough to cover the projects is a worse problem. So that's what I have. And they had a big meeting here yesterday with Charlie and Lisa and all her people, but I don't know what they went over, whether they finalized anything for us or not.
I do know that they're continuing to work on the accounting for the fall special town meeting. So I'm hopeful in the short term, in the next few weeks, that we'll get a number in terms of the unspent, uncommitted CPA money that we might have available. But at the end of the day, the only money that we can actually count on today, we've already spent the receipts for this year in the awards that were made in the June town meeting. So the only money that we can actually identify is that 250 plus thousand that we have in the extra payment that we received, the extra match that we received from the state. So keep that in mind as we look at the applications for award now for consideration at the town meeting in September. Any questions on that? I think we're all frustrated with the lack of progress, but it is what it is.
Is there any more information than the word mystery about the money in the bank with the CPA fund's name on it?
I have never got an answer about how it got there, how it was spent, where it was finally spent.
Does it relate to anything about prior year lack of spending of funds in prior years?
Yes.
That's exactly what it's.
So we could, right?
Well, we spent that money, but where did they move or not move money to is the question.
We never spent all the money, so there's extra
No.
money. What David says is correct.
What I have, but I have no verification, is all the money we received from the state and the town versus all the money we've spent or committed.
Right.
And I come up with a figure around 800,000. But I don't
I
have
would think so.
any.
I thought we
don't have-
probably had that, yeah. And now we have another 250.
I'm including that.
Oh, you've included that? Oh, I would have put it higher, but okay, that's mine just a guess.
Well, it could very well be.
Yeah,
So does that mean that the money that was paid out as CPA funds was paid out of some other account of the town?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Because it was
exactly
real money that was paid out.
right.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly the problem, David. Is
The
that they
debt
have to
service
go
was
back.
paid.
Yeah.
All our projects were paid, but did they really set the money in the right places, or did they just take it out of the town,
So if that's the case, then presumably this 2.9 million, a lot of it would be reallocated to other accounts at some point.
Correct.
I assume that's what they're busy trying to figure out.
Yeah, okay.
And Jan was laughing and saying that she has been on the committee for 20 years, but it might be 20 years worth of accounting that they have to do to come up. No, unfortunately.
The last time it really all matched up was not after Marilyn, who had it matching, but Connie Boulos that was here briefly for a year. We had everything accounted for at the time she left.
And when was that?
2018, is that right? No,
around there.
around there, yeah.
Okay.
And then I would try to sit down with the accountants and they left one by one.
Right,
So
okay.
I never knew what they were doing.
Well, guys, I want to say that we're really just speculating at this point. So
Right.
we
Right.
think an accounting is imminent. We think there is
Yes.
substantial unspent balance. But let's see what they come back with, and then we can respond to that. So I'd say let's put that aside for now.
Yep, okay.
We'll deal with it when it becomes no.
Whenever, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so now the applications that we received for the July 15th grant award round. Mary, do you want to tell us what applications we received?
Well, you received the select board application for Maurice's. You received another application, but it's really not for the special town meeting. It's for the annual town meeting 23.
Great. So the only one that we're going to consider today is the Maurice's Campground. And with us is Ryan Curley, who's the select board chair, who really submitted that application on behalf of the town. So before we get into the money part of it, are there questions that people have about the application itself or about Maurice's? Any issues or concerns that folks have reading that over?
Well, the paper had the septic situation story this week, which hadn't really been brought up before. I think everybody was excited that we could get water from Eastham, and that this is such a good project for Wellfleet. But that cesspool situation and so forth, I don't know that is something that we have to deal with. I suppose any voting or anything that we decide to do will be contingent upon everything working the way it's supposed to. Is that not correct, Gary?
I think what I'll do is I'll defer to Ryan to comment on the septic, but you are correct, is that in a way, I guess we're voting with our pocketbooks, with the pocketbooks of
Just the money.
people in the town. No, so we should be clear about the project itself and be confident about it. But I see that Ryan has his hand up, and I'm going to recognize Ryan. Go ahead, Ryan.
Sure. So, and so this, we've only just working on finalizing it now. But our plan now is to go before the Board of Health on the August 24th or August 25th, so that the septic question will hopefully be settled before the special town meeting vote. So that's our plan right now, and that's what we're working on, if that helps.
Yes.
So I would add to that, you were right, Jan, to raise that question. It is a significant liability that we have to address. When the town takes it over, we will really be responsible for that septic situation and have to bring it up to code or ask for a waiver for a period of time so that we can look at alternative solutions. And that's what Ryan is talking about, is that those of you who actually read down to the fine print at the end of the proposal, in the purchase and sale agreement, it does say that the sale is contingent upon getting a waiver from the Board of Health for the septic system. And that would give us the time we need to plan what we want to do there, regardless of what the Board of Health says or what the situation is with the cesspools. The town will eventually have to deal with the septic there. When we build housing or whatever we put, whatever facilities we put in there, we will have to deal with that. So it's not an issue that is unique to this. And we'll certainly have to look at that, but I don't think it's a deal breaker if we can get that waiver, number one. And number two is it's something the town will have to deal with eventually anyway.
Mhm.
Other comments or questions about the Maurice's campground itself? Yes, Elaine. Elaine, you're muted.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, you know, in all the due diligence that's been done so far, the cesspools are working. They get pumped every year, and the water quality at Maurice's is better than most of us have. Their nitrates are under 1%. It's like 0.0 something.
Mm.
So, you know, the cesspools are working. So if we get the waiver, I think we can feel pretty confident that in the interim time, you know, it'll be okay. But anyone that property goes to would have to do probably something
Right.
similar.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Ryan. Other comments about the project itself or questions? All right, so now we get into the interesting part of the,
The bond.
well, let me explain what the request is, and maybe Ryan, jump in when you feel like it. So what you have before you is a request by the town to use CPA funds to help pay for the Maurice's acquisition. And in order to use CPA money, they have to designate a certain amount of the land. It has to be specific, and it has to be an appraised value. So what Ryan and his group did was to take an estimate of the cost of an acre of land at $350,000, which is a whole other thing, but that is about the going rate in Wellfleet for an acre of land, and say that they could identify 3 acres of land that weren't included. You know, the purchase of the campground is based upon a commitment to continue to run the trailer park and the campground for at least 6 years.
Mhm.
So much of the land is taken up by the trailers, the campground, the cottages. There is a one full-time house there, and there are a number of other buildings. So all of that land would not be eligible for a deed restriction.
Mhm.
And that's really the defining scope of that. So what this is not to say that much of that land won't eventually be used for housing, but in terms of the CPC, the only land that we are considering today is the 3 acres that are adjacent to the store on Route 6 that are closer to the Eastham side and abut the Village Lane access. And as acres go, these are 3 of the best. So they're relatively flat, they're relatively cleared. They have access to a town road in Village Lane. And we think that they will appraise for significantly higher than the cost per acre of the whole property. So what happens now in terms of the $1,050,000 being requested is that is contingent upon getting a third-party appraisal
Mhm.
of those 3 acres. So what the CPC will consider is the smaller of either the 1,050,000 or the appraised value. So if it comes in at, just for the sake of argument, 1.2 million, the amount that we're approving, we would approve if we consider it, would still be capped at 1,050,000. If it comes in under that appraisal, then we would reduce the amount that we could award based upon that. So the gating issue in terms of the amount is the appraisal and the 3 acres that are before us on that application.
Boy, that was very well explained, Gary. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jan. Any questions that people have? Michael, go ahead.
Yes, actually, 2 questions. First, this purchase would not be out of the open space quota. It would be out of a different quota from our budget.
Correct. We're going to get into where the money would come from, Michael, but the answer, we did meet with the Open Space Committee. And we also had input from the state on this. And the decision was not to ask for any open space money so that we would not have to go through the process of trying to identify that land. And the amount would be relatively small against the total purchase price. And the other reality, so it's a tricky thing, guys. The amount of land that we consider for the CPA grant will be deed restricted. It would be deed restricted whether it was housing or whether it was open space, which means that we couldn't, what we hope to do on Maurice's is if it's approved by the town, we're going to go through a big planning process. What should we have there and where? If we decide to buy this property. And anything that we deed restrict will be only limited to that use and those financial restrictions in terms of, in the case of housing, it would be the area median income that could be serviced in that particular piece. In the case of open space, it would have to be restricted. So the decision was not to ask for open space money as part of this, Michael.
Yeah, Gary?
Yes, go ahead, Dave.
I'm thinking about.
Okay, thanks, Michael. You had a second
sorry.
question. Sorry.
Right.
Well, this I assume you're going to go through is just the sequence of events.
Yes, we'll certainly talk about if we decide to give the money, how do we do that and when? Okay, go ahead, David. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, so I understand how this is targeted and why and all of that, but I also assume that as part of the larger planning process, we would still have the ability, we, the town, to allocate additional acreage for affordable housing.
Sure. So Ryan, do you want to comment on what your vision is going forward?
I mean, there's what my vision is, and I think there's a diversity of views on exactly what's suitable for the site. But the intention all along has been to utilize the majority of it for housing.
Okay.
You know, so just because we're setting aside or we're putting a deed restriction on these 3 acres doesn't mean that, you know, the rest of the acreage is not going to be utilized for housing. In terms of the appraisal, also there is a appraiser has been retained. I'm not sure when they're expected to complete their work, but the contract was signed and executed on the 14th. So hopefully we should have an appraised value for the CPC relatively near term. Yeah, so the acreage identified here is also, so there is one side of the property that has a small wetland area, and this is away from the wetland. So it's outside of any possible setbacks related to a wetland. It's flat, it's relatively clear. It's currently used mostly for storage. Yeah, it does have 200 feet of frontage, or over 200 feet of frontage on a town road. There is a store out in front. And there's been ongoing discussion as to what to do with the store long term. And so this also leaves enough acreage to be associated for the store if for any reason the store is sold off in the future. So yeah, I mean, all the flexibility is still there. But yeah, this purchase is aimed at housing. So
So,
Good.
David, the Eastham is going through a similar process. They bought the Tea
Right.
Time and the stores at Skagit Corners, and they're going through a townwide planning process now. What should we do with that property? What's the best use? And clearly, at the top of our list is housing, but there are other uses that property can be put to in addition to housing, not instead of housing.
Yeah.
Well, housing and community center.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so a community center and storage and a lot of things that could potentially go there. It's a big piece of property, folks. It's
Yeah.
This is the major acquisition the town has ever done.
Mhm.
So it's definitely a big deal.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to go back and take the second half of Michael's question now is, okay, so now the amount is $1,050,000 based upon the price per acre or the appraisal, whichever is less. So let's call it $1,050,000. Excuse me, for the sake of our conversation. Going back to our earlier discussion, the easiest solution would be if we had $1 million or some number like that available, would be to grant it outright to the purchase. As of today, as we sit here, we don't have that money. So if we want to approve this purchase, the only way we could do it is to support the bonding effort that the town is going to. Let me be clear, is we, the CPC, are not bonding. What we are doing, we're not, the bond doesn't come in our name, Jan.
Oh,
So the bond goes out in the name of the town. It's the town's indebtedness. We are a source of funding to pay for that bond. So
okay.
Ryan might talk for a second about how much we have to borrow versus other sources of income that we're looking at to pay for it. But we, the CPA, are just one of those sources, potential sources of funds to help pay for the bond, as opposed to simply taxpayer indebtedness.
But should we also consider reducing that amount by the 250,000 that we have from the state as our little windfall right now?
Yeah, you're right on target, Jan. So we can consider that. I think when we get further into this, we might want to say, this is our strategy as of today. And if we get more information about the nature of the balance that we have available, because the one thing I wanted to point out to you, everybody, I can put it up on the screen if you like, but the sheet that we sent out with the indebtedness, the one I want to really point out is even for $1,050,000, which is a lot of money, but is a small amount compared to the total purchase price. The cost for us to borrow that is $750,000. So to borrow $1 million costs us an additional $750,000, and that's the carrying cost of the bond over 30 years.
Yeah, so all the more to Jan's point, if we could figure out
If
ways
we
to
can
lower
reduce-
the beginning amount, that would be great.
Exactly right. So the impact on the CPA and the impact on the town.
Right.
It is significant on that. So something to keep in mind as we go forward on this.
Gary, can I ask a quick question?
Sure,
Ms.
of course,
Rhonda?
Rhonda.
So given that, are we allowed to make balloon payments should the CPA or some other source over that time find balloon payments to put towards that? So obviously it's not $750,000 over, just as though we each had a 30-year loan on our house. Are you allowed to make a balloon payment to create, or we find donors to create that bond to be less?
Rhonda, I am not at all a bond experience in bonds or a lawyer, but my understanding is the answer is no.
Oh,
So once you go out for the borrowing, you're making a commitment to the lenders.
oh, interesting.
This amount of money over this period of time, and they're giving you that money up front in exchange for that agreement.
Uh-huh.
So that even if you get a windfall later on,
You can't pay it off.
you can't what's called prepay.
Right, you can't, there is a prepay clause. Okay,
Right, there is a prepay penalty is what.
yeah, that
And
probably
that's the
means.
same thing, honestly. It's also analogous to the mortgage on your house, is that
Mhm.
if you won the lottery and wanted to just pay off your house, you wouldn't just pay the outstanding balance, but there would be a fee associated with that.
Mhm.
So just to push it a little farther on decreasing that amount. So
Right.
is there any, the other chunk of money potentially, is this possibly $600,000 more that was discussed, and that may or may not be real, and I don't know when it would become clarified, but depending on the timing of this, theoretically, we could add the 600,000 to the 250.
You are exactly right, David. We could do that. But let's be clear. It's a balancing act, folks. So we know, I'll give you two other examples of significant asks that I know are coming, or
Right.
that I think are coming.
Right.
One is for 95 Lawrence Road for housing, and we still don't have the request from the developer. But we do know that on a similar sized project in Truro, the CPA was asked for $750,000. And a slightly bigger project in Eastham, the town had to come up with an amount in excess of $1 million
Mhm.
in order to make the financing. So that's still out there.
Yeah.
And Elaine was telling me, Elaine may want to comment about Payne Hollow. Would they,
Talk about 20 years.
right,
Right.
right. So maybe give us
Yeah.
an update on Payne Hollow, but also say what the developer is saying.
Yeah, well, Payne Hollow finally has the go-ahead for the 8 apartments there. But the pre-development work of the road and everything, Ted Malone estimates at about $1 million. But he has approached the town for the town to go out for either MassWorks or a small project infrastructure grant. So that initial money should be coming from hopefully grants that the town can get, but should it not, there's another project that might need a boost of sorts.
So the money we don't commit today to this project in terms of balance in the bank dollars as opposed to future money impacts, it's multiple moving pieces on this, David. So just something to keep in mind.
Right, for sure, yeah.
Ryan, do you want to talk about for just a second what other sources of money the town is looking at to fund this purchase?
Sure. So, and it's kind of outlined in the application package as well. So there is, as part of the purchase of the property, we've agreed to run the business for a period of 6 years. All indications are is that it's, fairly profitable. And, so we'll either be setting up a enterprise fund or a revolving fund for the operations related to the campground. More than likely, we'll hire, we'll either have lease it to a contractor or hire a contractor to operate the campground. But the monies that are left over from that can be applied towards the debt. So we're thinking about, conservatively burdening either the enterprise fund or the revolving fund with about, $500,000 of the total cost. And then there's at the annual town meeting, the voters approved 2 community impact fees on certain types of short-term rentals. One thing that people get confused about is that I do need to make it clear that it doesn't apply to all short-term rentals. So it just applies to some. And that community impact fee is 3% of that. The 35% that is being deposited into, or will be deposited into, a affordable housing stabilization fund. And then the remaining 65% is being deposited into mixed income housing stabilization fund. So and that has to be, any transfers out of those funds need to be approved by town meeting. And so we're hoping to, at the annual town meeting in the spring, is go before, the voters and ask them for basically the revenues that are received in the mixed income housing stabilization fund to date at that point, to apply towards the purchase going forward. And so it will be 2 quarters worth of receipts at that point, right now. And then it leaves the other 2 quarters unreserved at that, so that there's some flexibility there as well. I do really need to caution people on how much money those community impact fees can be expected to generate. The error bars are pretty high, and there's, it's basically somebody has to have at least essentially 2 housing units in the town, and rent them on a short-term basis to qualify under these community impact fees. There's definitely houses that do, but it's not all the short-term rentals. But yeah, and then the remainder would be funded by a debt exclusion for the property tax levy. So overall, between the different funding sources, the goal is to reduce the overall impact by between 30 to 40% on the tax levy. And then also for the levy itself, the residents receive the residential tax exemption, which is an effective reduction on a median priced home of about 21% on their annual taxes. And yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, Gary.
No, it's a complex, it is a complex thing, but I wanted to make one thing clear. This is just like when you buy your house. You may have a lot of sources to pay for the mortgage, but at the end of the day, there's a closing date, and you have to pay the money on that day. So this has a closing date, just like your house, at the end of October, Halloween. And so if we, the town, decide to go forward with this, we have to pay the owners of Maurice 6.5 million on that day. So although we can talk about the funding sources, including CPA, at the end of the day, we will have to have that money on that day. So what Ryan is talking about is the reducing the impact on the taxpayers in terms of funding that borrowing. But in terms of actually raising the money, it would have to be a bond or some indebtedness instrument that the town would do in order to have $6.5 million in the bank to pay that money on that day. Okay, are there other questions about more? Yes, go ahead, Jan.
May I ask, Ryan, there's been so much talk about the interest that we're going to be charged. We used to have such a wonderful bond rating, one of the lowest in the state, I believe. And then when this whole business came up with the accounting in fault, people said, and I don't know if that was real, that our bond rating was going to be horrendous. And of course, that makes a huge difference in what we bond for the October deadline. Any feeling, Ryan, how that's going?
Sure.
And
Wellfleet is still has a AAA bond rating.
it does.
Yes.
Wonderful.
We are strategizing. I mean, it's been a continued discussion about strategizing how the finance, indebtedness would be structured. But the interest rate itself is going to be a moving target, until we get to, actually, issuing a bond, because as we're well aware, the Fed is moving on interest rates. So, I mean, in terms of the actual interest, it's going to be more than it has been in the recent past for interest rates. What exactly the final interest rate will be on this is still to be determined. But right now, Wellfleet has a AAA rating, so we would qualify for, basically.
That's great possible. Yeah.
So Jan, I want a couple comments on that.
Yeah.
Although we've had some accounting oddities, the reality is our indebtedness is very low as a town relative to our assets. So we have good assets, and we haven't borrowed a lot of money against that. Our tax rate is still amongst the lowest in the state. Obviously, it's gone up a bit, but it's still low relative to other places, which is what the bond borrowers or bond lenders also look at. So no one can say exactly what our bond rating will be. We haven't borrowed.
No.
We haven't borrowed significantly in the bond market since then. And Ryan touched on it. Is I used 4.5% as it's really a guesstimate, guys, as to what the bond rate will be. I got that from the town treasurer and from Harry Takanian, but remains to be seen what the actual cost will be. But it's not going to be, 2x that, or it's not a huge increase over that. It's just more than it was in the last couple of years.
Mhm.
Go ahead, David.
I just want to be clear about, so we're not doing the bonding ourselves. I get that.
Right.
But are we essentially providing security or partial security for a bond that the town takes out?
I wouldn't use the word security, although maybe the town administrator would look at it that way, David, but the bond lenders really look at it, don't look at us in particular, but they look at the total indebtedness of the town and the source of funding. So, we're just a contributor to that payment source.
So
But
would we then be committing to paying out some specific amount for 30 years out of
So-
CPA funds?
maybe if it's okay at this point, I did draft a potential, it's a complicated issue. So I did draft a potential motion for us to consider. Do you want to take a look at that at this
Yeah.
time and really talk about the different elements of this?
Yeah, great, sure.
Okay, hold on just a second. I have to share my screen, share screen. Share. Okay, so can you all see that?
Yes,
Yeah,
Yes.
All right, so let's go through this line by line and definitely this is a work in progress. So it's by no means a final thing. If you have concerns or want to make changes. But
Gary, one thing.
Yeah.
So the deed restriction has to be held by a third party. And what we're proposing is that the Wellfleet Housing Authority be the third party to hold the deed restriction.
right, Ryan is correct. And I have to say that I liberally borrowed from other towns and that have done bonding on this. But the deed restriction itself it's a document. It's the same document that we file when we do the buy down or when we have an affordable housing project. It's the state's deed rider. And in the case of undeveloped land and bonding, there is a third-party guarantor that's required as part of that process by the lawyers. And in this case, it would be the CPA granting the town through the select board access to the money, and the guarantee would be held, or it's administered. The deed restriction would be administered by the housing authority. Everybody got that? Okay. All right, so let's just take this line by line. So to provide the town through the select board with access up to 1,050,000. It's up to because we don't know the appraised value, and there's no point in doing the appraised value until the CPA actually approves lending the money. The community preservation funds, that's our money, town money that we administer to acquire. Now, I don't know if I can say at least 3 acres. Approximately 3 acres perhaps would be a better to acquire approximately until we have the appraisal and we have the definite dimensions of those 3 acres.
no, I think at least is the correct thing.
At least, okay,
Yeah, because if you say approximately, it could be less than 3, and
Right.
that would not be allowed by, the rule, so.
right. So let's leave it at 3 acres of land. That's part of the Maurice's acquisition. And here's the real key is to appropriate and authorize the borrowing of $1,050,000 under the terms of, and this is the state law that defines the Community Preservation Fund and Act. And in that, there are a lot of prescriptions about the deed rider and about how the money can be borrowed, and about that third party administrator, et cetera. So that part that is really the key, is to appropriate and authorize the borrowing under the terms of the Community Preservation Act.
Right.
It says the parcel will be deed restricted. And here's something I'm not 100% sure of. In the ones that I read for other towns and in the deed rider that we have, that we sign for other properties, the state requirement is to be under 80% of affordable, average median income for the county. We hope to use this land to also address the affordability issue for people at 100% of AMI. So that's one of the considerations in this deed rider. It may be that this particular plot of land can be used for 80% AMI and not 100% AMI. Everybody clear on that? And the answer is, I don't know which is allowed. I suspect it is 80%. Elaine, do you want to comment on that or have any observation on it?
Well, I don't know if town council probably hasn't seen this yet, or
No, nor do I.
even someone at MHP. I would hope that because we're using CPA money, we can find a way to
Right.
allow it to go up to 100%.
So that's why I put in that term, or 100% if permissible under the deed rider. Okay, folks, so that's one consideration for the town and for us, is essentially we, the CPA, are buying the deed rider for this portion of the property being purchased. So regardless of what everyone else says, this land cannot be used for anything else other than housing. And that's really what we're buying.
And that's rental housing, correct?
No, it can be ownership as well. So it's affordable ownership or affordable rental.
Gary?
Yes,
You have the provision that the community preservation funds that are supplied by the town.
right. I'm sorry, you're quite
surcharge.
right. Right, okay, so.
3% surcharge.
Yes, all right. So I added this last line. I don't know if it makes sense or not. The maximum annual amount authorized to be expended for this purpose is under the CPC is not to exceed $100,000 a year. I was thinking, you talked about the bond rating and the interest rate. We don't know what that will be, but do we want to give the town a blank check? We could take this out. What Mary is referring to is going back up to the regulations under 44B. The only money that we, the CPC, the only CPA money that we, the CPC, can commit to future projects, which this is the local receipts. So we have to exclude the amount of money that we get from the state on the match in terms of our calculation. So our local receipts are approximately $550,000 a year. The last year that we actually have a firm figure on is FY21. So that's 2 years ago. And that number, for those of you interested, is $557,288. $557,288. So that's if you will, the pool of money that we can actually apply to this. Whatever the state match is, we can use for lots of other purposes, but not for borrowing. And I think the logic is, we know what our tax receipts are, and we control those. We don't know what the state match will be, so it's hard to commit future money to that match.
Gary?
Yes, David.
So I'm kind of going back in my mind to Jan's comment earlier about the $252,000 amount. Is there a way that we could do an additional, consider making it an additional contribution, let's say $200,000, not to cut it too tight, so we have a little extra, to reduce the amount, the bond amount, but to 800,000, something, 800,050?
Well, again, we wouldn't necessarily, we could do a couple of things, David. And let me tell you what my thinking is.
Yeah.
We could make an outright grant that would reduce the purchase price. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that we had the 200,000 that we wanted to commit. That, I believe, we could commit to the outright purchase. Now, remember, that's the state match fund, not local sources. So we couldn't use that for the indebtedness,
Okay,
but we could use that potentially as an outright grant. So
Right.
the town would have to borrow not 6.5 million, but 6.3 million.
okay,
And they could use that 200,000.
okay.
Gary?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that this is actually our shot. Once the property is purchased, you can't commit any more CPA money to the purchase. Eventually, if the project went forward, there might be ways to use CPA money for the development, but this is our real shot to help purchase the property. So I appreciate that people are thinking about, if there's money outside the local match that we could also commit at this point. It's very much worth considering.
Thank you, Elaine. Michael?
Yes, I wonder, we had talked about various contingencies. Would it be necessary to have that in contingent on a successful purchase or something like that?
Michael, let me tell you, here's my thinking, and please, people respond to this or tell me what you would like to do. We still don't know. I was hoping that we would know by today what unspent balance we might have available to us to apply to this. And again, remember that if we commit that $200,000 to this, we won't have that in the future for
Right.
other projects. But here's my thinking. We could pass something today, which essentially would be the bond funding. And we could reserve having another meeting before, and I'm told that the warrant won't be completed until August 9th. So we could plan another meeting. And if we got actually an accounting from the town about unspent funds, we could readdress this and either reduce this amount or increase the amount that we could give to reduce the purchase price.
Do we have any, I know this is a possible question to answer. Do we have any idea if we would get that in time, get the clarity on the number?
I can only say, David, that I mentioned to everybody I could think of that this meeting was happening on this date and would be really great to have that amount.
Yeah.
And we still don't have it. So I'm hesitant to commit
Yeah. Fair enough.
to
Yeah.
anything else. I don't know if Ryan has any other comment on that, but
No, I don't.
no, okay.
know.
So, I mean, it's not the select board, but it's the administration
Right, right. Yeah.
that we're waiting on. So that's my thinking, is to look at the borrowing today. If and when we have other money, to relook at that sometime between now and August 9th. And we could amend it accordingly. But again, keep in mind that we will have no more money between now and July 1st of next year for any other purpose.
Right.
So the money we spent, that, the gross amount that we spend now will reduce our options for other projects down the line.
But the way I think about it too, though, is the 252,000 is in a way found the money. And it does, and maybe a happy coincidence to be able to contribute to the cost of buying the campground.
It certainly worked, David, you're exactly right. And again, I refer you back to the cost of borrowing.
Yeah.
So, if we were to reduce that by some amount, it would have a positive impact for the town and for the CPC.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So if you look at that projection, that spreadsheet that we had up there, in the first year, based upon the current bond rating and a 4.5% estimated borrowing rate, it would be approximately $83,000 and decline each year if we were supporting $1,050,000 worth of borrowing by the town. So that's really what we are committing. And can I just say, there's the possibility that the town will not go out for a bond for everything, or that they will look at a 20-year as opposed to a 30-year bond. I think those are the only two choices, but.
Which is why I think 100,000 in the last line there might not work, Gary.
Yeah, I mean, I could easily strike that. I mean, literally, I put that in there just trying to think that, do we want to cap the amount that we're committing?
Well, if we cap it, I think that's too tight. If 83 is what it would cost ideally,
Right.
The number of things that could happen.
Okay.
So maybe that could say 125,000 or something, but
That's perfectly reasonable, Jan. So
Yeah.
we can amend
Yeah,
that.
there could be delays and the interest rates go shooting up, for example.
exactly.
And I would tell you that there is a very small amount that is the insurance that isn't in that. So that could affect the payment as well. So let's change this number from 100 to 125,000.
Yeah. Good idea.
Okay. All right. So are you comfortable with my asking someone to actually make this motion? Are there other questions that people have about the?
No, it's a good start.
Okay, right. And as I mentioned, or maybe I was talking before you got on, but it's important what we do today. But what will happen is that this will go to town council. And they will craft the motion that we approve at town, that we consider on the warrant, and that we approve or disapprove at town meeting.
Right.
So it may be different in form from this, although hopefully not in substance. And again, I'm sorry, David, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify. So that would be another reason to have an additional meeting prior to the finalization of the warrant.
You are correct, David. When we get to next meeting, I think we're going to have to put one forward either at the end of July or the beginning of August.
Yeah.
To consider the motion that's going actually before the voters through the warrant.
Mhm.
Okay. So
I will move this motion,
all right.
Gary, and maybe somebody will second it.
I'd second it. It's Rhonda.
But before you move it, I want to note that there's been a change from 100,000 to 125,000.
225.
And I want to make clear that that money is coming from the local receipts only. So that's that 557,000 figure that we used before. We can't commit future state match.
Mhm.
And so some portion of this could probably be crafted in the actual motion will be from the 10% set aside of the local receipts, approximately $55,000,
Not
Plus-
from the 10%.
plus
The
the
10% is a mix.
10%, I understand is the mix, but the 10% that is the local part is only 55,000. And that the
housing.
rest will be also from local receipts that are not designated for either housing, open space, or historic.
Right.
Everybody with me on that, or?
Yes,
Yes.
that's what we would expect. Yes.
Okay, now we haven't done bonding before, other than the land bank. And that was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So this is a new process for us. But lots of other towns have used CPA bonding to pay for purchases for housing. Okay,
Gary, just so I understand,
go ahead, Michael.
if we pass this,
Yes.
we're committed to this way forward, or is this just to go to town council for a more legal reading of it?
Michael, I think the answer is yes. We are committing that the
Both.
money that we control to this purpose, the structure of the actual motion, the amount, I don't think the amount can change. But the structure of the actual motion, I'm sure will change in
Right.
accordance with town council's reading of the rules and regulations
Yeah.
associated with this.
So is there a way to give us a little bit more time by, instead of having this as a motion, have it as a preliminary in some way? It's subject to the town council's revisions?
I don't know what we, Michael, I don't think we can be a little bit pregnant on this. So I think we have to decide whether we want to support this project. This is a starting point. And again, it says up to $1,050,000. So we could potentially reduce
Change it.
both upon the appraisal, and if we decide we could
Amend it. Mhm.
we could amend it, exactly right, at the meeting that we're going to have at the end of August or beginning of, excuse me, the end of July or the beginning of August.
Sure.
But I think we have to start with making a motion and.
A pledge. We have to pledge something in
Exactly
order
right,
to put the whole thing in motion.
right. So it moves from an abstraction to
Yes.
something concrete that they can respond to.
So one very small point, there shouldn't be a period after rider.
Is there not, you are correct. No,
There is a period.
Right?
Well, there's a space, there's something there that's the
Um,
grammar spellers got you
yes,
wrong.
I'm gonna say, so can I do this? Yes, there you
Yeah,
go.
there you go.
So I think I just put an extra space there because there is the clause of the area median income. We talked about this last time, guys, but
Period after income. That's what we need.
This is-
Area
I got
median
it.
income. There's where the period goes. Yeah.
All right, and I'm gonna change this for the sake
125.
of argument, 125. All right, so that's
Okay, that's what I'm moving.
right. And I just want to make,
Well, I have one other recommendation.
okay, go ahead.
The map and parcel, not just the 80 State Highway, but the actual map and parcel, just map 40, parcel 23.
Where do you want that to go, Elaine?
After
Mary?
80 State Highway,
Highway, Wellfleet,
yeah, you can put Wellfleet assessors map number
map 40, is that what you said?
40, parcel 23. Okay.
Okay,
Oh, good.
Mary, you had taken a step. Is there anything else that you want to change on this?
Well, that, I had that in mind.
Okay, right. Anything else?
And I had the language about the local tax.
Oh,
only.
so
You're using the Wellfleet CPA surcharge, 33% surcharge receipts only. Or a
3%.
combination, well, that was, that's
Well, I think when we
Let
include
council-
the law, and the law tells us that,
Right.
that
We
we're
don't need
we're
to
including that
include
by
that.
reference. Yeah,
Right, right. We don't need to put that in.
okay,
Right, yeah.
all right. So we are at the point, are there other comments on this?
Was there a second?
No,
Yes,
wait, I don't, who made the,
Rhonda seconded.
I moved it, but I
wait,
didn't.
Jan, wait a second.
Hmm.
We've changed it since you originally moved
Okay,
it. So
okay.
if you wouldn't mind, let's move it again to this language that's
Yes,
in front of us.
happy to do that. I move what we see on the screen now. 1,050,000, et cetera.
Okay,
I seconded it, yeah.
great. So it's been moved and seconded.
Mhm.
Are there other questions or comments that people have? Okay, so this is a big deal, guys. Take your time and think about it. And is this the right thing for us to be doing at the right time? But I'm going to call for the vote. And I think this time, rather than do our normal all in, we should have a roll call vote.
Sure.
So I will call the vote just as I see it on my screen. David Mead Fox,
Aye.
Elaine,
Aye.
who's next on my screen here? Let me take a look. Fred,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
Rhonda,
Aye.
Jan,
Aye.
did I get everybody?
What about you?
So,
I
Yeah, you.
apologize, Jim.
Jim, aye.
Excellent. And Gary, aye. Is there anybody voting no or any abstentions? Well, then motion is passed unanimously. Thank you guys so much. I think this is a huge step for the town.
Yes.
And well supported by the CPC. I think it will go a long way with the voters.
Good. I
All right.
hope so.
Ryan, did you have your hand up?
No, it was a thumbs up.
Oh, thumbs up. Well, Ryan, can I just say publicly that you have done so much work on this, and it's much appreciated. And we wish you and the select board the best with this.
Yes.
Thank you. And thank you for your support.
All right. All right. So I'm now going to move to the next item as soon as I find my agenda. And that is agreements. You are up, Mary.
okay, so all the internal agreements are signed and the money is available. The external agreements, I'm collecting all the outside signatures right now. And the reason the Duxbury model agreement was in there, town council, Katie Klein, kind of used that as a better model, even though I was following the old KP law model. So I just put it out there for your consideration for next year's agreements. It had a lot of clear language I liked. It had some additional information that was added to it that was also useful that we could consider.
Okay.
She was proposing it. I really liked it, but I wanted you to look at it too. And as soon as the select board signs the rest of the outside agreements, those are good to go too.
Super. Is there anything that we need to vote on today with respect to the agreements, Mary?
I don't think so. You would approve them to go forward. We're just waiting for signatures now.
Great. Any questions that members have? The next, seeing none, the next item of business is the coordinator's job description and timeline. We've spent an awful lot of time. We're well past 10 o'clock. I'm wondering, Mary, is this something we could take up at the next meeting?
Sure.
Any members feel strongly about that?
That's good.
Okay. Needs presentation to select board. Mary, do you want to talk to this?
Well, I'm going to, according to the last set of minutes, try to get open space on board with the select board after special town meeting. Is that right, Fred?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, and then you are the the canary in the coal mine. We're sending you out first because the thought was maybe they would look at each one a little more than they do when Gary and I have come and presented the whole package of everything at once. So we would like to see how it goes, I think.
Yeah.
So I
If you
think,
could do it, if you could do it in October, that'd be better for me. I got a lot of family stuff going on in September.
Okay, I'll try for October, but I'm not even gonna try until after they finish special town meeting.
Yeah, good.
traditionally, Fred, it's been in the December timeframe. So that, are you here in?
In December?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hearing, well, I think so. My December plans are
Maybe
not
we should
sure.
shoot.
I like to go visit family in around Christmas time, but other than that, I'm
Sure.
pretty much here.
All right.
Was your thought one per year, Gary? Was that why you?
Yeah, that's why, right.
Yeah, realistically, it probably will end up December.
Okay. All right, issues, concerns, updates.
Well, if anybody doesn't have more to say about the playground, it's underway.
Yeah, huh? Ooh,
What, do you have an
Right.
estimate when they're going to get it done? Is
I don't, but they're going at it.
That's good. I'll have to stop by.
Yeah, and also Lily House, I went to get her signatures, and that's going along well. She said people are already booking. I want that room. I want that room. I did the same. I want that room.
well, that's terrific.
And I haven't heard any complaints. Well, wait, that cemetery guy kind of struck again. The one with the longstanding feud, and there's $10,000 in a grant we gave the cemetery commissioners 2 years ago, maybe it's going on 3, and they're going to just use it not for restoration, but some signs and a little, like whatever they can, pull stones back up again, and then that's it. When the 10,000 is spent, that's it.
All right. Is there anything for us to do on that, Mary?
No. They just wanted us to know.
yeah.
Okay, I have one, it's not exactly an update, maybe more of a public announcement. There is a wonderful concert to benefit housing that is going on the Monday, August 8th at Watt, and it features the 40th anniversary of the Narrowland String Band. Some of you have been around. Sometime that's Stephen Russell and company. And all the proceeds will go to support your affordable housing. So I may take the liberty of sending you the announcement, but invite you to join in, help support the cause of affordable housing. All right, now we get to the next meeting. So we traditionally have met on a Wednesday, but there's certainly nothing sacred about that. But if we were to
Put
schedule,
aside next week, I think, when we talked about this originally.
right, I just don't know. I'm thinking, so here's the two choices, honestly, Jan. We could do it next week, which is July 27th,
All right.
or we could do it the 3rd of August. So,
Probably have a much better chance of having
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
information on the 3rd.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, Jan, is we'll give them as much, we can't go much past that. And hopefully by then, we will have a language from town council for the warrant.
Yes.
So
And I would hope if we don't have a full accounting, that we'll have a estimate of the land value, appraisal.
Right. Honestly, there was no point in the town doing the appraisal until
We
we,
voted it, sure.
until we passed it. So now that we have passed it, now it's still subject to obviously being approved at town meeting.
Right.
But yes, hopefully. Ryan, do you have any sense of that?
I think he left us.
Oh, all right. I still see his.
No, I'm still here.
All right. So Ryan, two things. When do you think you'll have the warrant back from town council?
I don't know the answer to that one.
We're just trying to schedule our meeting so that we can respond to that language.
Okay.
So I guess can we ask you, if possible, to have this language back from town council by the August 1st? So that we can have it in time for our meeting on the 3rd?
You'll have to talk to the town administrator.
Okay.
So it's supposed to go through him.
Okay. So Mary?
He's not here this week, the rest of the week.
Yeah,
No.
he's available. Gary, I'll give you his number. He said that he's available.
Okay, but yes, go ahead and send it to me, but Mary, if you could just send him this, or do you want me to?
Send the
The motion and.
motion, send it to
about
me. It didn't come through before, and well, send it to him too.
All right, and I've changed it based upon our discussion. So I'll send it to you and to him, and to ask for if we could get the language back from town council prior to the 1st.
Gary,
Yes.
I got a question about dates, and if this messes everybody up, I can maybe make it work, but is there any chance we could have the meeting on August the 4th instead of Wednesday, the next day?
I have a meeting at 10 on the
No,
4th, but no, we meet at 9. I don't think, well, famous last words, but you know, I think we usually can do our business within an hour. So anybody else have a preference as to Thursday or Wednesday, the 3rd or the 4th?
I have a 10:30, but that'll be all right.
10:30 on Thursday, you're saying? Dan?
So,
Okay.
so 9 is fine.
So,
I really appreciate it if we could.
sure, David, we're happy to accommodate folks. So if no one else has an objection, I think I will make the meeting, set the meeting for Thursday, the 4th of September, of August at 9 o'clock.
Great.
And we're still able to do Zoom.
Yes.
March,
For
until
those
March.
of you, right, for those of you who don't know, the governor did sign an extension of the Zoom meeting
Yeah.
authorization through March of next year.
And there's a whole new influx of disease, so probably just as well.
Yeah.
It is possible to do the hybrid meeting, but I think Zoom works for us.
Mhm.
Okay,
Are we going to look at that list that Mary gave us of the time?
Next
Is
meeting.
that-
right. I'm sorry,
Timeframe?
Dan, I think I took the liberty of suggesting that we,
That one, okay.
the job description and the timeline, we'll take that up at the next meeting, since
Yeah.
it's not time sensitive.
I heard job description. I didn't hear
You-
timeline, so.
You are correct, Jan. I did not say timeline, and I should have.
Okay, it's just because I have a wish to change something on
Oh,
that.
all right. Oh,
So,
good.
you know.
We're happy to make changes for the better. Okay, so the meeting is set for the 4th at 9 o'clock.
Good.
Everybody okay with that? All right.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna ask for adjournment unless someone has some other comments or questions. All right, seeing none, I'll.
Thank you
entertain-
for your work, Gary.
Thank you all for your participation. This was heavy lifting today, so great work, guys. I think it's an important project, and we're doing our part.
Thank you for everything, all this work you're doing. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Who would like to move to adjourn?
I do. I move we adjourn today.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Well, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
We'll see you in August. Enjoy this
Thank you.
lovely weather. Okay,
Bye.
You well.
stay cool.
Bye-bye.
Share.
You sure, send me that,
Right, I have to stop the recording. Wait.
Yep,
Just a minute.
I'm gonna leave,
Stop recording. I've stopped the recording.
trying to leave.
All right, Mary, I'll copy you on the email I send to Rich.